Good morning, everyone. Unfortunately, Councillor Doherty is unwell today, so you've got me instead. I'm sorry about that. But I hope we all wish her a speedy recovery. Okay, on to the agenda. So have we got any apologies today?
Yes, thank you. Chair, we have, as you say, apologies from Tracy Doherty. We also have apologies from Councillor Wayne Luker and Councillor Helen Williams.
Thank you. And have we got any declarations of interest today? No? Okay. So the minutes of the meeting held on the 16th of October 2025, do you all agree with how they are? Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you. Okay. Without further ado, we'll hand over to the first annual report of the Stafford and Stoke-on-Trent Adult Safeguarding Partnership Board.
Okay, and Adrian Green is the chair.
And Adrian Green. Thank you.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay? Okay, thank you. I'm Adrian Green. I'm the independent chair for the Stoke and Staffordshire Adult Safeguarding Partnership, which is a statutory board which is to ensure that there are effective multi-agency arrangements that seek to protect people who have support and care needs from abuse and neglect, and that includes self-neglect as well. And the three statutory main actions of the board are to create a 3-year strategic plan, to report on that plan within the annual report, which is being presented to you today, and also to consider significant incidents where death or serious injury has occurred that fit the criteria under the Care Act for a Safeguarding Adults review. Commission that review, accept the recommendations, and deliver the actions that will help to prevent reoccurrence or to celebrate and embed good practice, which will also do the same. The board is a joint board cutting across Stoke and Staffordshire. The key statutory partners under the Care Act are the police, the local authorities, and the ICB. And then we have broader partnership members, probation, prison, the actual foundation, trusts, etc. Looking at this year's report, I'll just pull out some key points to go through. You'll see early on in the report that the Staffordshire Council comment on things that are particular to them, and looking at their engagement of inquiries where people are able to engage, that's gone up to 88% from 75%. The appropriate people included in those inquiries has gone up significantly, 82% from 62%, and the relevant information included within those inquiries has gone up from 84% to 91%, and those inquiries being proportionate and not too intrusive, following the principles of making safeguarding personal, has gone up from 87% to 93%. The CQC inspection occurred within this reporting period, and there was good feedback and obviously a good grading from that inspection. They gave good feedback on the DOLs. There is a backlog, but it's better than the national average, about 50% better. And there was comment around the use of advocates, which had increased, slightly still below national average, but a significant improvement nonetheless, and an improvement in the capacity for best interest assessors. 66% of the adults asked about desired outcomes within these inquiries, 52% expressed a view, and of those 60% had those desired outcomes achieved in full, or 35% partial. And that's to do with inquiries. We'll come on to a little bit more data later on. The Council have implemented a front door in April. They've got their integrated discharge hub, which you will have read about. And whilst there are waiting lists for Care Act assessments and occupational therapy assessments, they aren't excessive when compared nationally. It's good practice with regards to transition. There's more that can be done, in my opinion, but looking at supporting young people who've moved into adulthood up to the age of 25 and ensuring that there are care plans in advance around the age of 17 and a half. Looking at the concerns that have come in, there's been 16,500 concerns that have come into Staffordshire council. That's an increase of 3.86%. Many councils have seen an increase nationally, and the conversion rate to Section 42 is 19%, and that's an increase of 3%. That 19% is lower than the national average, but this isn't a key metric to be reported nationally because there are so many variables within it. So that you need to understand how those variables are in play within each council. Looking at the top types of concern, the first one is neglect and omission. The second one is financial, and that within your area is linked significantly to familial abuse, where a family member has abstracted financial gain. Third one is domestic abuse. Fourth is physical, and the fifth is psychological and emotional. And when they convert into Section 42 inquiries, they follow the same rank structure. So that's a positive in that you are not seeing bias within decision making. Of note, the domestic abuse is significantly higher than that found within Stoke. 20% of those concerns were subject of repeat Section 42s within the same 12-month reporting period. Again, that's higher than Stoke's, but there will be some procedural differences that account for that. The largest cohort within the Section 42 inquiry is 75 onwards, which is normal. 75 to 84 age is 25% of all Section 42 inquiries, and 23% for the 85 to 94 age group, and 5% thereafter. The split between male and female is 58% female and 42% male, when you've got a census data that shows equal division between the genders. This is down to that age grouping. So you've got 53% of all Section 42s over 75, and the slight differential in the age that people lived, females living about 4 years longer than males, accounts for this difference. Looking at the racial split, still some work to do around data capture. The not recorded has improved almost 6%, so it's 5.8% up from 1.1. That's because of the work we did last year. But there's still some data capture issues around the not knowns, the others, and any other mixed Asian and ethnic groups, which does skew this data and makes it less dependable. The areas just to look at from my perspective are the Indian population with a population of 1.1 and a Section 42 conversion of 0.3, and the Pakistani community with a census population of 1.3% and only showing within 1% of Section 42s. The board did some work on this to try to understand it prior to the CQC inspection. What we identified was, again, the massive impact of the over 75-year-olds, and within those community groups, there wasn't a significant number aged within that grouping. So I think over the next 4 years, we will see that age grouping get bigger within these communities, and we should see some balance within the Section 42 conversions, and that's certainly what we'll be looking for. Just to point out that self-neglect doesn't feature within the top 6 rankings of abuse, but because of its catastrophic nature, it does have a significant impact on our resources, and it does show within our SARS. Nationally, 44% of SARS have elements of self-neglect, and 3 of the SARS, 3 of the 8 that we commissioned within the reporting period were indeed for self-neglect. We also believe that organisational abuse is underreported, and the Staffordshire system does cause some issues on data collection because it can only capture one type of abuse, whereas Stokes captures multiples. Staffordshire are replacing its system in 2027 to Liquid Logic, the same as Stoke, and we should be able to pull in that multifaceted data that we currently can't. In terms of locations of abuse, it hasn't really changed. 64% are in their own home, that's down 3%, and home or hospital is 30%. In terms of outcomes from the Section 42s, we've got an outcome request or desired outcome up to 71% from 63, of which 80% was fully achieved and 16% partially achieved. So what that really means is that in 96% of the cases where people have expressed a desired outcome within the inquiries under Section 42, 96% of them are having the risk removed entirely or partially as per their desired outcomes. And that's the same as last year. In terms of our audit subgroup, the audits give us assurance of effective partnership arrangements and show consistent good performance. In terms of our SARs, we've had a significant increase in SAR referrals. We had 32 SAR referrals. That's a big increase, as you will have read within the report. There are a number of reasons for this. First of all, when I took office, police hadn't submitted correctly some of the notifications. We did a piece of work to look back over a couple of years, and we submitted those. The definition was wrongly being applied in some circumstances. There has been a national increase across the country. There is a local anomaly which is looking at some complex cases which has raised that number, and we've done work as part of the board's connection and engagement around raising awareness. When we've looked to see whether there are issues around our ratification, what we've identified is there are no significant themes. They are all serious. They are actually more complex than other locations that I work in, but there isn't a concern that there is a single issue that we need to address. The key areas within our SARs are around Mental Capacity Act, multidisciplinary arrangements, and self-neglect. So in summary, we had, out of those number, 8 met the SAR criteria, and we have commissioned independent-led safeguarding adults reviews. 10 did not meet that criteria, but we have undertaken single agency learning, which the SAR subgroup will monitor and have oversight. And 6 did not meet the criteria, and no further action was taken. 8 have been carried into the next reporting period. Things to just comment upon, we have done a development session, and we have rewritten the next 3-year strategic plan, and we have come out with our new priorities that look at connection with our practitioners and our community. It looks at prevention, particularly around self-neglect and transition from services and young person to adult, and also looking at confident practice, looking at trauma-informed approaches, and how we can support our staff to be confident in delivery of the services, making safeguarding personal. Right care, right person has been introduced by the police. I can give you some assurance that we've had a number of presentations from the police to board to try to understand this. As it stands, Staffordshire Police are not now attending between 950 and 1,040 on average incidents per month. And we've seen a significant drop in the number of concern forms that they submit as a consequence of that. Challenged them on where those incidents may have gone to. There is a bit of a data gap around that. I'm really pleased to see that Staffordshire Police have commissioned a local university to do some work to try and get a better understanding. Challenged the rest of the partners to see if there has been an impact in their capacity, and what we are monitoring from them is that they aren't seeing a negative impact, but we wait to see whether there are further emerging issues around mental health crisis teams, assessments for mental health, front doors, ambulance service, but there isn't as current. Rough sleeping has been mandated by the government to come under the purview of the board. We have complied with all the requirements from central government on that. We have appointed a rough sleeping champion. There is a combined working group now, including all the district councils within Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent City Council. And we have also worked with central government regional advisors within the working group to set up a performance measurement to actually track as a cohort what they call the local priority group, who are persistent, reoccurring rough sleepers. And we have come up with an action plan which is still in development, bringing in wider partners to try to achieve a reduction within that cohort of individuals. That's the key things from the report. Happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you. I thought that was a brilliant report as well, so thank you for that too. So questions, anyone? Councillor Wallens, please.
Thank you, Chair. I do apologise. I got a cold, a bit of a sore throat, so I do apologise if you can't hear me or understand what
I
I'm
can
saying.
hear fine.
But yeah, thank you for the presentation. On page 39, it shows that the SAR referrals have jumped from an average of 5 to 32 referrals, which is it's a positive that awareness is rising. Can you clarify whether this reflects worsening conditions, improved reporting or capacity issues in partner agencies?
Right, okay. So, as I mentioned, some of this is attributed to the issues that we had with the police. So the police hadn't been submitting referrals. They'd been submitting them where there'd been a domestic homicide, but there was a gap in the fact that they hadn't been submitting safeguarding adult referrals. Did some work with the police. They went back to 2022 to look at whether there were any that should be submitted, and they submitted ones that they felt should be considered. So that's part of that. There was another application of the criteria, so that agencies felt that if it was single agency, it wouldn't be a SAR. I challenged that in the fact that it could be that it's single agency that is the fault. And if you take it to its logical consequence, if nobody did anything, then there would be no multi-agency work. Well, it's obviously going to warrant a review. So that's part of the increase. Nationally, there is an increase, and that's got to be in part because of austerity, an aging population. I've already told you, you've got 53% in the over 75s. As they age, they're presenting more need, more complexity. There's a push to actually have more people remain in their home. You've got initiatives like hospital at home, etc. You've already seen the number of concerns that come from the home, 60% for your council. So I think all of these things create some opportunities where abuse and neglect can fall on people with care and support needs. There are no doubt some issues around mental capacity assessments, the recording of those, and the confidence of staff. We did an audit on that, which highlighted there was some training to make people more confident about it. There are some complexities with self-neglect which have shown up within our SARs, and again the need for staff to follow the self-neglect protocols, the power when they use the multidisciplinary team approach, and also, which has just been implemented now within Staffordshire, a higher level escalation opportunity where cases which aren't finding traction for resolution can actually be escalated to senior people who've had additional training to try to pull together the multi-agency approach to try and resolve these things. So we hope that the numbers would have come down quite a few, which was a concern. But what we have seen over the last quarter is it's just started to flatten out. So we think we're probably past that bulge in number, and it should come down. Not quite sure as to what level it will finish being as a constant, an annual constant thereafter. Does that answer your question sufficiently?
Yes, it does. Thank you. I just got one more question as well. But thank you for that. On page 24, the training and review processes are clearly improving, with 149 staff trained. How are we measuring in actual changes in frontline practice, or not just training attendance?
Yeah. So there's two things here. So there's two sources of training. One for practitioners within the councils, which is the academy, and then there is another source of training for delivery for people within the care sector. And then that links into actually the feedback from staff. So it's not just about the fact that they attended, it's the fact that what impact did we see a period thereafter. within their frontline practice and the capabilities of the team. And then that links into the audit, assurance and quality subgroup within the 4 levels of audit that are undertaken by the board. So that ranges from full multi-agency audits right down to case file audits, where we'll look at the recording within the case files, the outcomes with the individuals, metrics around the engagement of the people and their wider caring network, to understand the outcomes of the training that we've given and the need for raising further awareness or broadening the offer of that training.
To add on.
Yeah, just thanks for that, Adrian. Just to sort of further add, just from a sort of local authority perspective, alongside what we do with the board, we also do our own internal audits as well on a monthly basis to look at that practice. We do a number of those based just around decision making, looking at our multi-agency engagement, looking at use of the Mental Capacity Act. And further on from that as well, what we do is we seek feedback as well from adults to try and triangulate that information together. So we're not just looking at the impact as I might see on practice, but actually from the people in our community who have had contact with our service to ensure that actually they see the benefits of that. I also complete monthly peer reviews with the teams in my role as principal social worker to gather that feedback to make sure that the training is meeting their needs, that they understand and that they can raise as well areas of practice where they feel as well they require further support. So hopefully across the across all of that that you've heard from Adrian and myself, you can see that we are looking to make sure we embed those changes in practice. Thanks.
Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the report, Adrian. It's very interesting reading. Bear with me because I've got a few questions. I'm sure they'll be very straightforward for you. Firstly, I'm interested in knowing more about the figures for domestic abuse, Staffordshire compared to Stoke, and to understand if what work is going on to identify why we have an increase, why we have a much higher figure of incidents in Staffordshire than we do in Stoke. Do you want me to ask them all at once, and then, or do you want to answer them one at a time?
I'll answer them one at a time. That's a very good anomaly. I think it's important just to flag up that the domestic abuse issues that the board are responsible for are domestic abuse where people have care and support needs. Otherwise, that now comes under the statutory domestic abuse board. And just to give you some assurance, we have met multiple times to work on the strategy and also the actual performance metrics that are exchanged between us. So for my board, I want to make sure that people who are flagging up domestic abuse into the domestic abuse partners are actually also identifying those people who are perpetrators and victims of domestic abuse with care and support needs. That needs to be flagged to us. That's the metric that I'm interested in. And the other metric that I'm interested in is where, from a social care perspective, our practitioners are dealing with people with care and support needs. They're identifying domestic abuse, and those referrals to the domestic abuse partners are being submitted. And directly to your question as to why there is a difference between the Stoke and Staffordshire and Stoke domestic abuse Staffordshire, I think it is down to the fact that you can have physical violence and it can be domestic related. Now, Stoke and Staffordshire can capture that. Stoke, rather, liquid logic system can capture those multiple levels of abuse, whereas the Staffordshire system can't. So I think you will find that there is a difference in the recording sophistication that shows up as that anomaly between the two. And that's what we've been working on, and that's partly why Staffordshire have now commissioned and bought the system Liquid Logic, but it'll take a number of years to roll that out. I don't know if you had anything that you wanted to add directly from a council perspective, Ruth?
I suppose in a lot of ways you've covered it, but it is that difference. So the practitioners in my teams can only pick one type of abuse, so you're going to get more of a proportion in some areas. So if you can split something, you almost get a greater range of types of abuse. So they will go on what they feel is the main type of abuse, which often, if it's happened within a domestic setting with a member of the family, due to some training that was done to, historically, we actually had very low numbers of domestic abuse comparatively. So we did some training to highlight actually how much broader domestic abuse is than just being sort of in a relationship based. So now I think well, we understand from having had a look at this that where this has happened, as I say, in a domestic setting or between relations, they will choose domestic abuse, even if it might actually be better categorised in a wider sense of being physical abuse with a sort of element of domestic abuse.
So it's not a case that it's how it's reported rather than the number of incidents.
I would absolutely say that, and what we're not necessarily picking up on is that we've got any difference when we obviously meet with Stoke, we have these discussions in the board, which is really helpful, because actually if I didn't have those conversations to understand those differences in reporting, I'd be looking at this going, what's the difference? But actually it is that difference in reporting rather than a significant difference of us having high numbers of domestic abuse in that sort of criminal sense when you look at it, than Stoke-on-Trent.
Yeah, just to kind of add an example to that, you can have coercive control, you can have physical abuse, you can have psychological abuse, and you can have financial. And actually all of those are within the domestic context. So it's quite hard when you've only got one primary abuse item to record to make sure that the practitioners are capturing the data that is most appropriate. But hopefully within 2027, with the rollout of Liquid Logic, that will put us on the same position as Stoke, and the staff will be able to record that greater depth of detail, which would be really helpful.
Thank you. I understand that much better now. Thank you very much. My next question is with regards to Asian communities and how you're reaching those over 75s and what work is happening to help those people be able to reach out and get the help like anybody else does.
Yeah. So we reviewed this within our development day when we've set the new 3-year priorities. And that is priority number 1, which is connect. And that's about connecting to 2 sides. One, our practitioners, and making the work that the board does really meaningful and try to support them in the work that they're doing within our communities. And then the other side of that is to actually get that outreach into our communities, understand where there are pockets of hard to hear groups, make them understand how they can access services and what services are available, what abuse and neglect looks like, and how they can report it, and what the journey will be when they do, so they can have confidence around that. We've done National Safeguarding Week, we've done promotions, we've done leaflets, we've done other kind of approaches to get into those communities, and that's part of the delivery plan that we will continue to deliver on against the next 3 years. So you're very right to pick that up, particularly with the changing population that we've got, and there's more work to do on that so that we understand it better.
Can I just add further to that as well from the work of the board, individually within the local authority? We've now got 2 people that are going out to into community groups within some of our areas. So I've reached out to faith-based groups as well as going out into other community settings, engaging with people. not primarily just to talk about safeguarding, but actually to talk about how we can work better, how we can actually engage them in a way that's more meaningful to them. So from a sort of just purely from an adult social care perspective. So we have that work going on in the background, which we will then utilise to support the work of the board as we move forward with the new priorities, to make sure then that we can tailor that into safeguarding response, as well as our wider duties within adult social care.
Chairman, I do have other questions, but I'm going to give way because I know there are others that are waiting.
No problem, thank you. So, any other questions at all from anyone else? Yes, Mr. Bell.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the comprehensive report. Really appreciate it. I know how challenging this area is, but the one thing that I just come back to is I'd really like to know from you, what would you say are the top 3 challenges for you in terms of ensuring that these very vulnerable people truly are getting the support that they need? Because, you know, there are clearly lived experiences of that not being the case, despite all of your best efforts, and we recognise all of the challenges that are there with finances and staffing and everything else like that. But I'd really like to sort of try and get it in a nutshell of how do we ensure that these very vulnerable people are being targeted appropriately, because you know, again, the lived experiences sometimes are different. Thank you.
Okay, taking out of it budget, staffing, you know, everyone's having to work harder, and growth of a more complex elderly community. In summary, very quickly, I would say that it's mental capacity, it's information exchange, it's working as a multidisciplinary team approach as part of that information exchange, it's line of sight, and it's professional curiosity. I would say the last thing is practitioners need to stop thinking referral is an outcome. Referrals are our high-risk areas where we bounce one person to another agency, and it is not sophisticated enough to understand that actually actions have happened. So we can send it to an agency, they try to make contact, person doesn't engage, and then they close it. The first agency thinks that actually something's happening. And you know, we have people who have anxiety, agoraphobia, etc., you know, not attending appointments and then getting their services closed because they didn't attend. You know, I had one where, you know, a dementia patient had forgotten to attend an appointment. Really? Did you not expect that? So I think those, in a nutshell, are the things that just keep reoccurring. Post-COVID, we've got some things around the use of telephone instead of going to visit people, not talking to the patient, but talking to carers, which makes that vulnerability. And you find GPs are often left holding the issue when they haven't got capacity to actually get out and see people. Those are the recurring themes, notwithstanding structural, financial, staffing capacity, etc. Those are the things that we need to fix.
Many thanks, Adrian. That is really refreshing to hear that in a nutshell, because, you know, I do agree with you. I think it seems to be that referral seems to be an outcome, and also, you know, it's the challenge of trying to get certain cases off books, etc., which is missing out the key factor of the person behind all of this. So again, just in terms of a follow-up question to that, how are you going to ensure that services that are out there, GPs, hospitals, also private support that's being given in some cases by elderly paying for things for care that actually they're entitled to, but they just don't know about it? So in a similar nutshell, how would you sort of say you'd approach that?
Are you saying how do people identify the services that they're entitled to?
How are the services themselves talking to each other? So that, for example,
right.
if you've got a private carers that are going into an elderly person's home and they are being paid for, when actually the person does qualify for support, then how are they flagging that up to you and your teams? Does that make sense?
So that's that partly that's that transition. So transition of service. It's about raising awareness and making sure that people understand what is available for them and how they can get it. It's about making sure within our case file audits that the options have been recorded, that the making safeguarding personal is really evident. That's a six pillar model. It isn't, as you might think from the name, it's just making it feel nice. It's a six pillar model that staff have to follow. It's also about learning from our SARS. So where's the gaps that people have fallen through, and making sure that our action plans actually deliver against those gaps, and making sure that those audits then follow those SAR actions to make sure that that's been embedded. In terms of our connectivity, it's about making sure that we've got our safeguarding champions in our communities. And then it's also about making sure that we've got that multidisciplinary team approach and it's being applied quickly, so that actually different agencies can actually work with other agencies and tell them what the offer is and how they can actually deliver that service to those individuals. It is quite a difficult situation, especially with the home, you know, that push for keeping people at home and getting that line of sight. So the interaction with the social workers, front doors, is really key.
Thank you. Councillor Nixon, please.
Thank you. Thank you for the report and speaking to us today. Forgive me if I've missed this piece of data, but on page 43, the number of safeguarding concerns received, obviously Staffordshire is a massive area. Is there a breakdown of demographic in that to identify hotspots, etc., ethnicity, rural, urban, etc.?
So there isn't a breakdown in terms of the rural, urban, etc., but you will see within there, if you look at the section 42s versus the census data, it breaks it right down. And the two areas that I would say are slightly out of kilter are Indian and Pakistani, and I did some work for the CQC which showed that that is an age-related issue. My point with the data in the ethnic minority is whilst we've improved on the unknown, I think it's 6.8% up from 1.1, actually we've still got holes in the data because of the mixed race. There's about 7 areas where actually it flaws the data. So there's a vulnerability within the data on ethnic minority. But that breakdown, if you look at the section 42s versus census, you will see that they are roughly on a par, except for the Indian and Pakistani. And then if you look at the concerns versus section 42, they are equal in terms of the criteria of concern. So you can pan them across.
Thank you for that. But
Wait, Councillor Nixon, Ruth, just
Sorry, I just want to add, just from the point of view of localising the data. So quarterly, I meet with our chief exec and also the chair of this group, and in that meeting I do share a breakdown from based on the district data as well. So we are able to, as a local authority, break it down by district area. I could break it down further because we could look at what the individual types are, but we tend to just break it down by how many referrals we're getting for each of those areas. So on a quarterly basis, we do that with the chair, which I'm sure if people, you know, wanted to, that presentation that I share there can be shared with this group as well.
thank you. That's very interesting. That would be useful, particularly for us guys, that there's any issues in our areas that we can support with. Thank you.
Thank you.
I actually have a question, if everyone doesn't mind. Health Watch UK is due to be disbanded. We see
Right.
Health Watch coming through this report quite frequently. How do you believe that will impact you?
I don't know. There's an honest reply, but I'll give you another honest reply. I would not be surprised at all if Health Watch remained. And I think maybe what was missed in the announcement is Health Watch, being a member of the statutory board, is actually enshrined in legislation. And so legislation will have to be amended for Health Watch to be withdrawn. We have talked about it at the board. It is on our risk register. Whatever happens to Health Watch, there will be a need for some alternative. And as a board and as a national group, because we come under the National Chairs Group, we will be making sure that that role that Health Watch provides is provided in another way. But I wouldn't be surprised if that objective withered on the vine in due course.
That would be fantastic if that did happen. Thank you. So next question, Councillor Wilson, you said you had some more.
Yeah, thank you. If I can go to Ruth, actually, as the councillor to my left suggested, that it would be useful for us to have that kind of heat map to show where the hotspots are. That would be great. But does that not quite make it quite obvious that the gap with the over 75 reporting would be in kind of Burton area, because that's where we have the most diversity in the county, so that makes it easier for you to identify that that's the area that you need to target. And also my particular part of the county, South Staffs, the demographics are of an older age. I don't know if that's a good thing, or I'm sure it's a good thing. So you know, does that correlate that you've got more reporting in areas where the demographics are inevitably older?
So, yes and no, as these things often are, aren't they? So it obviously, a lot of people who fall into our older age category are placed within our residential and nursing homes as well, because we have quite a high proportion of residential and nursing homes within the local authority area as well. So actually there's more of an even split than you might think based on some of our demographic data, but it does show that. Certainly when it comes to our looking at our sort of ethnic diversity areas, it is Burton actually where we're going into to try and support and work with individual communities there. I do know as well, actually, just you mentioning South Staffs, there was a group that I think is held at the County Council, can't think of the name, I was just trying to think of the name of one of these groups, where our engagement officers, as we call them, have been going to meet, to go out and reach out to some of the communities. What we've noticed is actually more within our rural areas where we pick up on concerns later. So this is where when we talk about complexity, when we talk about difficulties, that does seem to happen more within our more rural locations, which makes sense, doesn't it? They're less likely to have contact with agencies and also less likely to have contact with their communities as well, as they become more restricted in their ability to independently sort of access community facilities, so they tend to become more withdrawn, don't get to GP surgeries as often, these sorts of things. So we have picked up on those. What I think might be interesting, just from hearing you guys talking today, is maybe this is something that I can come out and meet with you individually for your areas, so you can talk about concerns that you have particularly as well within your locality, and we can compare that then with the data and then look to see how we can better work on this, you know, across, you know, and we can put the support in the right area. Sometimes I do think, you know, as I've said before in meetings like this, you tend to have the contact with your constituents that I might not have being, you know, as being a, you know, sort of principal social worker. It's a very different relationship. So actually to help understand that, to see if we can refine some of the work that we're doing, that could be something that we look at. It's not going to be quick, you know, coming around to all of you, but I think that might be something, particularly to help as well, you maybe understand what we're looking at within our area, what we really see from a safeguarding perspective. That might then help you as well if it's an area that, you know, that I've not expected people to be as familiar with my area of work as I am. So if that would be an offer that would support you, then I'd be happy, you know, to arrange those.
I certainly would welcome that for myself. I understand that this committee is for the whole county, but I think there is value in connecting with representatives from each of the 8 districts and boroughs. And I suppose that you must have district leads that help you with that as well. So I suppose they're the kind of the conduit, the contact. Can I just finish by saying that I'm looking in the detail of the report, and I'm seeing the tables and the charts with the percentage figures on, and I see that in the actual text of the report we're seeing the figures. It would be much easier for me to understand actual figures in the tables, if that would be possible for next time. And just to say as well that I was really heartened to hear from Adrian that 96% of the referrals you've seen are having the risk removed. So that sounds fantastic and something to be congratulated on, if I understood that correctly.
Yes, that is correct, 96%. We'll look at the presentation of the data. Different people like different things, so it's trying to get a report that covers both. I'm just warning, my battery's just about to go flat, so if I disappear, I do apologise. It's eaten it very quickly, but it's still going, so if there's anything else.
Are there any more questions at all from anyone? I haven't got my glasses on, so big movements are needed today. No, thank you. And thank you so much again for the report. It was fantastic, and thank you for joining us today.
No, thank you very much for inviting me. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. We're just going to give everyone a second to move into where they are for this next part of the agenda for the send. Thank you. Are we all ready? Oh, that's my computer, sorry. Okay, if you'd like to start with your report. Thank you.
Okay. So, I'm pleased to introduce Staffordshire's new Special Educational Needs and Disability and Alternative Provision Strategy for 2026 to 2029. This strategy is shaped by the voices and experiences of children, young people, families and professionals across our county. It is built on the foundation of shared ambition, lived experience and the commitment to doing better together. SEND is a deeply personal and is often very emotive topic for many in our communities. We understand the challenges families face in navigating such a complex system and the pressures professionals are under to meet growing and diverse needs. This strategy is our collective response and is a commitment to focus our efforts where they can make greatest difference and to work together to improve our outcomes. This strategy has been co-produced with over 900 individuals, including children and young people, parents and carers, and professionals from education, health and care. And this has been done through surveys, community events and digital engagement. We've listened carefully and used that feedback to shape every part of our strategy. We are aware of the frustrations of delays, the impact of poor communication and the need for more inclusive environments. We've also heard about what works, the power of supportive relationships, the value of early help, and the difference that inclusive practice can make. The strategy outlines 3 clear priorities: timely, consistent support so that children and young people get the help they need when they need it, listening to supporting families, embedding co-production and improving communication across the system, and nurturing inclusive environments and best practice, equipping professionals with the tools and the competence to meet diverse needs. These priorities are supported by a robust delivery plan overseen by the SEND Inclusion Partnership Group, with progress reported to the SEND Strategic Effectiveness Board. This strategy is a shared commitment to placing children, young people and families at the heart of everything we do. It's a commitment to the work collaboratively across education, health and care, and to remain responsive to the national reforms, local government changes and evolving needs of our communities. We know there is more to do, but this strategy gives us a strong foundation built on lived experience, shared ambition and a commitment to continuous improvement. Its success depends on the capacity and resources of the partnership, including Council, the Integrated Care Board and the wider stakeholders. I'd also like to add, I additionally wanted to thank Ellie for writing the report and all the parents who have actually taken part in generating the data that we've collected so that we can in turn lead and create this strategy. As sometimes we understand that members of the public can be sometimes quite anxious getting involved in these in generating such data. So thank you for listening for the opening and any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt, and thank you for the report. We've been spoilt today with two really great reports, I have to say. Thank you. So, any questions from anyone? Councillor Wallins.
Cheers, and yeah, thank you for the report, Councillor Hunt. It was in quite in-depth detail. It was more of a suggestion, more of a question. And then not so long back, I've been invited, and I actually went to the Next Gen AP in Wolverhampton, which is like for loads of kids, for ranging from SEND, for kids who've been misguided in life and so forth. I was wondering, can we arrange a visit to these APs in Staffordshire, or maybe the one in Wolverhampton? I know it's not classed as Staffordshire, but because it gives you more of a eye-opener to go there in person to see what they do and so forth. And yeah, I think going there in person would be greatly benefited for this committee. Thank you.
I have to say, I think if councillors wanted to go and visit our alternative provision, our PRUs, short stay schools, they'd be highly delighted for you to visit. So we'll make contact with them, and then probably through the secretary we can kind of make the connection. And I think it's been clear around the purpose of the visits, but certainly they'd be highly delighted to welcome you to see the work and the effective work that they do with some of our most disadvantaged and some of our most challenging youngsters.
Thank you.
Again, big movements, please. Any more questions at all? I have Councillor Orlando Fantini. Okay, yes, please. Sorry. So I read in the report, I found it surprising that Key Stage 1 students, so these are the little 5-year-old students, had really felt angry and sad, and those are really big emotions for little children to have, especially towards their teachers. And then as well as that, they said that they would sit on the table of likes and dislikes. They were saying that they were getting yelled at, and I would hope that this isn't that there is more teaching the teachers, I suppose, more up-to-date methods of helping to, particularly to control in classrooms children of young ages. And is there further teaching on that?
I think I understand the question. No, not at all. I mean, it is remarkable to hear the views of young children, and I think often we don't recognise that even very young children have views. And I think one of the remarkable things about the strategy is the way in which those views were elicited. And when you ask young children, they will tell you how they're feeling. And I think what a lot of the kids are feeling and have told us echoes very clearly what older children and adults feel, particularly at this time as a community, with all the challenges that we're experiencing. And there is no doubt that children are more in touch with their emotions, which is a good thing. And what we need to do is help them to process those emotions. So there's a raft of work going on in our schools around working with children around understanding their emotions in a functional way. And I will add that emotions such as anxiety and depression are normal, often normal experiences. And we need to help children to recognise that. And clearly when they become so overwhelming, they become not normal experiences, and then there needs to be intervention. So I guess I'd say that we're doing an awful lot of work in that space, primarily through our educational psychology teams, but also the virtual school are doing a lot of work around restorative and relational practice. So we have acknowledged that there is an issue there, and we are absolutely targeting that.
Councillor Orlando Fantini.
Thank you, Chair. You're saying here that the challenges included inconsistent support and feeling ignored. So is there some examples of that? That actually sounds quite concerning to myself when I read that obviously some of the challenges, having inconsistent support and feeling ignored. Obviously with children with autism spectrum disorder, for instance, having inconsistent support could obviously affect them more emotionally than others. So can you just go in deeper with that for me?
I mean, it's something that we've, in this particular forum, have picked up quite frequently, haven't we, around the magnitude of need in Staffordshire and our ability to match that need with provision. I guess there are two things there. There's the sense that parents are clearly telling us that they're feeling there's an inconsistency in the amount of support that they're getting and the quality of that support, and we're addressing that going forward. But there's also the response of our schools and their challenges in meeting children's needs, around staffing levels, around the skill of those staff. So there really is a sense in this strategy of partnership working to address those challenges. So what I would say is that sense of and that experience of inconsistency is happening at all levels. And that's as a result of the unprecedented demand, the challenges with resource. But what we're doing within this strategy and the tactics that we're using alongside this strategy in terms of the things that we're doing to realise the strategy are very clear. They're very focused, they're all evidence-based, and we're making sure that we're getting in there as early as we can to support. And that's supporting schools in their delivery of this support as well.
Thank you for that, thank you.
Would you like to add on?
Just to add on to that, we are having, I think once we finalise the restructure over the next several months, I think the restructure will, open up a lot more capability in the long run to allow officers across Staffordshire to be able to be more consistent in their support as well. That's my perspective on it.
It was just to add as well from an individual school perspective. I delivered a presentation at the Education Leaders Network and gave a summary of children's experiences in school in Staffordshire, but also offered the opportunity for individual schools to get in touch to receive their individual feedback so that they can use that within their own strategies for improvement. And some teachers took me up on that, so I'm starting to share that information. So hopefully that will strengthen the strategy.
Thank you. This is a question for the councillor, and it's lovely. It's heartening to hear that you're taking into account everyone's concerns and it's a real focus for you. I've come across some correspondence, however, and I don't know how that ties into this body of work that you're covering, to suggest that the dedicated schools grant and high needs block support, which is non-statutory, some of it, will be removed from schools. That reduction of 25% in 2026-27, another 25% in 27 to 30, and the remainder will be withdrawn by 2030 to 31. So I'm just wondering how that jives with your apparent concerns and considerations for SEND schools in particular.
In terms of that part, as I say, I'm support members, so I've been focusing on the current issues which encompass this report around funding and everything. I think I'll come back to you later to actually answer that more specifically, because I've not heard of all the aspects of that.
May I recommend something? Would you like to forward the email on to Councillor Hunt and then perhaps that can be talked about at a later date once he's looked into the email further? Oh, would you like to send across the correspondence to him and then he can look into it further? Thank you.
So I can add the technical response back to the information that you're referring to, which is it's part of the, as everybody knows, and I think we referenced last time, challenges around resources. So there's a deficit management plan. And as part of that deficit management plan over the last 3 years, there's been a commitment to remove any non-statutory funding within that. And so as part of the plan last year, it's to do with what we call a lump sum specific element that's provided to our special schools that is non-statutory. And so, as we said, in terms of the DSG management plan, that's been there for a number of years now to remove. And so over last year, we committed to provide the funding for youngsters, and this is technical to do with planned places rather than to do with the number on the school roll. And then from 26-27, as was agreed by Schools Forum, so it was agreed at Schools Forum 2 weeks ago, to then reduce that funding over the next 5 years. And so whilst you referenced 25% in 26-27, technicalities are that will be 7/12 of 25%. So it actually starts to take effect from September 2026. So in that kind of next budget, so the 7/12 in 26-27 of 25%. The following 3 years would be then 25%, and then in the final year it's 5/12 of that 25%. Technical, but again, I mean, we can point you to the documents that were shared via Schools Forum and approved at Schools Forum. But it has been as part of our deficit management plan, as I say, for the last 3 years to remove the non-statutory elements of the funding that we provide.
Councillor Edgeler.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, all right, we sit here and we talk about sand, and it's a major, major problem, and it's a growing problem. And I've sat in meetings in this room for years now and listened to the problems we've got, and it's growing all the time, and we don't seem to be able to come to any conclusion. We're doing our best and what have you. But my question really is to do with parents. You know, you talk about children being in school, and picking up your Chairman about the angry and being upset and what have you. What work in schools, if that happens, do we work with parents? Because surely home life's got a lot to do with this as well. It's not just school's responsibility, it's home life as well. So do we incorporate the parents talking to them from the school? I just asked that question. Thank you.
So, I mean, I would agree with you. I've sat in meetings for more years than I can care to remember. And we were hopeful that the white paper would be released in the autumn term. And we're waiting for that, hopefully, in spring. There were some interesting leaks yesterday around funding arrangements, and the government's clearly doing a lot of work around further engagement with parents in particular. I'm hopeful that the white paper is going to give us a clear steer. But we've been very clear in Staffordshire in terms of our strategy and also the tactics that we're bringing to bear to realise that strategy. So all of our work, including the pre-statutory world, EAPDR, which we've spoken about, that enhanced pre-statutory support to schools, the CEDIS teams, the 8 CEDIS teams across the county, all of those strategies have an element of family engagement and support involved in their work. So wherever we've engaged in a SEND space, that always recognises the importance of the family system, the school system, and the community around them. What I would say is that from personal experience, a lot of our schools, in fact, I would struggle to think of a school that wasn't doing this, has a very strong commitment to engaging families, whether that's for children with SEND or any other needs that they may be experiencing. It's an increased challenge for our schools to engage in that space, whether it's providing breakfast or cleaning clothes, or doing all manner of other things that traditionally schools may not have engaged in. But our schools in Staffordshire, by my reckoning, are doing an incredible job in trying to meet the needs of our families. From a SEND perspective, we're moving towards a greater engagement of our families in the decision-making and planning for their children. And we know that, in fact, tomorrow we are engaging the whole SEND team in relivening that whole sense around team around the child and family meetings, so that conversations and decisions are held with families. And that will be rolling out in January of 2026, only a couple of weeks to go. And that's within the context of the increased challenges that you rightly point out. But our commitment to working with families is at the centre of everything we're doing, even with the challenges that we have.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just say I'm very pleased to hear that. Thank you.
Mr. Bellier.
Thanks very much. Again, thank you for your feedback and report. It's much appreciated, and all the work that you're doing, because it's incredibly challenging. I really welcome your comment about schools, by the way, because you know, as Director of Education for the Archdiocese of Birmingham, I go to a lot of schools and they are doing incredible amounts of work, and they are supporting these young people. And I think, again, we have to bear in mind that yes, their families are facing huge challenges, but so are schools, and the way in which they can respond to that. So I really appreciate that comment. On saying that, the systematic challenges, you know, I don't think there are any challenges, any surprises when we read those, are they? They're recurring themes. And, you know, I'm just wondering, if you take an example within the report, school leavers, only 30%, I think it was, felt prepared to leave when leaving school. And I just wonder, and I don't want to be oversimplistic when I say this, but are there any easy wins here? Because it comes back to the point of there are certain strategies that we might be able to implement fairly rapidly and quickly with the support of our schools to ensure that we can at least hit some of these things very, very effectively.
Thank you. I'm assuming you're talking about preparation for adulthood.
Yeah, and actually all the challenges as a whole. I mean, I'm just picked out one example there.
I mean, notwithstanding a good reflection on our curriculum and whether that's preparing children for the future, there is an awful lot that we can be doing, particularly in the SEND space. So the annual review at year 9 and year 10, and arguably even before that, should really focus on preparation for adulthood and make sure that those short-term outcomes and the targets that we're working to are leading on to the next stage. And one of the things that we try and do very carefully in Staffordshire is that when we're making provision for children, and you know, sometimes we don't get it right, and we recognise that, but the intention and our wish here is that when we're planning that next phase transfer, if you like, is to make sure that the course that the child is, a young adult at that stage, is moving on to actually builds into something. So it has a purposeful course. And the premise there is making sure that we're getting the child's voice in the first instance. So the course they then choose leads into the next stage towards the target to which they're aiming for. So it is all around those review processes and the reintroduction of the team and the team and child around the family meetings will make sure that we're eliciting those voices more clearly in the same way that we did through the strategy. Because for me, the level of engagement through the strategy was incredible. You know, you're talking about 900 people plus providing a very, very articulate view that then shaped the strategy for the whole of the county. That's good engagement and that's good co-production. And that's what we should be supporting schools to aim for.
Very much welcome that comment, and it's a great example actually, because in terms of the annual review, from the feedback of this report, is guidance being provided to schools to actually say, do you know what, in annual reviews we know that legally what we must do, but we also want you to cover A, B, C, D.
The guidance has been there since the code of practice has been in place and the regulations. I think the challenge, and again, you know, I'm feeling that a lot of my comments are very rosy here. I'm just going to provide some balance. But we're heading for 10,000 education, health and care plans in Staffordshire. So I checked this morning, we're at 9,700. So the reality of the situation is that our statutory obligations, to which we absolutely wake up every day aiming to hit are challenged by the degree of demand that there is. And that demand is equally felt in schools. The annual review process is led by our schools with the LA. So it's the schools that hold the annual review. So we will work and we will continue to work with them. And that's why it's so important to ensure that we've got that capacity, both in the statutory SEND team, but in some of the non-statutory teams that we have, the very small teams that are there for schools when they're pulling their hair out and saying, well, how do we do this? It's those people that we rely on. I'm thinking of two people in particular and we have two people who, are in the districts providing that support school improvement-wise around the SEND activity for our schools. We've got to make sure that there's still that capacity so that schools have somewhere to go to problem solve so that they can discharge their duties.
And totally agree with you. And again, what all I'm talking about is being able to give some guidance to school Senkos, for example, to say, actually, the surveys that we've done have identified aspect A, B, and C as key points that the children are telling us because of those being absent, they don't feel prepared for the next stage. So I'm not talking about anything other than just giving a little bit of supplementary guidance to the schools on that area to,
Absolutely, and it's part of priority 3 of the strategy, which is nurture and inclusive environments. That priority, the action under that, is around taking best practice from schools where we know they do it really well and sharing that best practice as a Staffordshire approach to some of this, and also expanding our whole school SEND offer, getting more schools involved. So yeah, all of that sort of activity around influencing and encouraging people is in priority 3 of the strategy.
And in addition, just as put more the political side, as the council side, as a part of the strategy, I have already started to get in contact with schools that I've seen as good practice as well, and started to direct them towards the co-production where we can actually spread that good practice out throughout Staffordshire as well.
Reverend Metcalfe, please.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for the report and for all the work that you're doing. And in a general way, everybody is aware that much more emphasis is being given to supporting SEND pupils and schools with SEND pupils. And we all welcome this and applaud this. It's a very change in culture that we're witnessing over the last decade or two in this respect. We welcome it and we want to support that. I'm just raising a very vague question, really. It's a comment almost. When we express rightly concern about children that are feeling sad and angry and so on, there are other children who are feeling angry and sad who are not SEND pupils, and I just wonder we should have a wider contextual kind of understanding that it's not just SEND pupils who may be feeling angry and sad, and similarly it's not just SEND pupils who may not feel ready for adult life. I'm just looking for a wider contextual kind of picture here.
So there are a number of pieces of work that take place around that, and one of the things I just want to pick up particularly is around, it started out as an attendance campaign, and so we have what we call Little Heroes, and so hopefully as you drive across the county you will see a couple of little characters outside our primary schools, which was around encouraging good attendance behaviour. But sitting alongside that, that's been widened now to think around some of the reasons why I might not like or think I like going to school, and a lot of that is around that anxiety that Hallett's referenced, which is those normal feelings that we all have. And as part of that strategy, there is now resources to support schools, to support children, and to support their families to talk about that anxiety and some of their feelings, so that we can express it when we're into school. So what is it that's causing that, and how do we respond to it? And as part of that strategy this year, we've introduced what's called a bear with a kind of a rucksack on its back, and it's about that opportunity to share some of your worries and some of your concerns, and to allow you to express them, so that we can actually talk about them rather than keeping them inside. And we're currently working with a pilot of secondary schools on a similar campaign, which is called I'm Here. But again, that talks about the value of school and education and about why you're there. And so you'll see I've got a badge on myself that talks about I'm here, why am I, in school. And it's that, again, that encouragement to talk about going to school, and again some of those natural feelings around anxiousness, anxiety, depression, and thinking about, okay, so how do we develop some of that resilience to support that access to education. And then we also work with our colleagues, PSHE, personal social health, kind of an emotional education, to respond to all youngsters, and to think around how we see it as being an inclusive setting. And so that work is taking place.
Councillor Edgeler, please.
Thank you, Chairman. As I say, it's a very good report, but my question really relates to when the children are leaving school. Is there any more we can do to help them into employment? With companies and that? Is there any work going on in that aspect? Because it must be very, very difficult for them when they come to be leaving school. I just wonder whether the school and companies have any association with one another to help these children into employment.
So, yes, is the answer to in terms of the work that goes on. So we also have a further skills and learning team that actually sit in the economy, infrastructure and skills, and they have personal advisors and tutors who work with youngsters in terms of supporting that ongoing learning and supporting them into either further education, apprenticeships, so that what we want to avoid is any youngster becoming what we would call not in education, employment or training. And so you might hear the word NEET. But what we actually want are youngsters who are in education, employment or training. And so, yes, in our skills team, there is work that goes on to support these youngsters kind of to progress into that, the world of apprenticeships, work into employment. And there are also opportunities to explore some of that. So, yeah, so we do have that going on.
I've got another question, and hopefully I word this one better. We hear about systematic challenges over and over again, but the numbers are just increasing year on year on year. And yet we hear about communication failures. We hear, particularly, you want to do the new tell it once approach. How will this go on with communication between the groups, between parents? Because I see that as a failure in communication, why the parents have previously had to repeat themselves. So how will this work?
So I guess the primary route to addressing that challenge is through the restructuring of the SEND services and making sure that we've got the correct capacity to deal with the needs that we're currently experiencing. And again, I reference the white paper because that will set the ground for, hopefully, for the new SEND space. That won't probably come in for a couple of years, but so we've got a job to do between now and then. So I'm hopeful that the new structure through the SEND teams will allow us to have better line of sight so that we can understand where there are gaps in capacity so that we can fill those gaps within our financial portfolio. And we can then provide those SEND teams with the support and challenge and leadership so they can discharge their duties more efficiently.
And I think it would be remiss of us not to, again, just reference resource and the funding that we receive as part of our dedicated schools grant. And that is resource both for our schools and also for our youngsters with special educational needs and disabilities. There is, again, reports that are in the public domain that quite clearly link the challenges that we particularly face with our high needs block and the resource that we receive to deliver the functions. So those local authorities that receive less funding tend to be those local authorities that are struggling the greatest. And it's both from a schools block perspective and also a high needs block perspective.
Thank you. Have we any more questions at all from anyone in the room? No? Okay. Thank you so much for coming today, and thank you for the report. It really was great. Thank you. So we'll be moving on to the work programme now. I would just like to say, would it be possible, Helen, if we received the district breakdown after that's been sent to you, and to see about a visit to alternative provisions as well, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So from this morning, I've made a note of both of those, and I'll follow those up after the meeting for you. We have, so if I just briefly update members on the work programme, you have got a meeting next week on Thursday again, and usually this is starting at 2 rather than 10, to point that out because I don't want people turning up at 10. And the papers for that were published yesterday. There's a couple of reports that were marked to follow, and I'm hoping to be able to get those to you today. So that's next week. Then since your October meeting, there's been a lot of work done. So you've the Elective Home Education Working Group has met twice, on the 16th of October and again on the 13th of November, and it has another meeting today at the conclusion of this particular meeting. We had the visit to the Integrated Front Door and Adult MASH on the 7th of November, which I think members found very useful and was particularly useful to help inform the discussion from this morning with the Adult Safeguarding Board. And on the 27th of October, you had the meeting with Phil Pusey and Lynn Milligan, which was looking at the safeguarding around extracurricular activities. So quite a busy month and a bit, really. The Family Hub briefing that we had got scheduled has moved back to the 19th of January, and that's a joint briefing with Health and Care Scrutiny members as well. There was a triangulation meeting that was held as well. That's a meeting between the Chair and Vice Chair, the Cabinet members that have responsibility for areas within the remit of this Scrutiny Committee, and key officers. There are a large number of suggestions that came out of that, and if members are comfortable with this, it might be useful to have a separate Teams meeting where we can sit down and look at planning your next set of meeting dates, because you've got a very full work programme up until the end of this municipal year, so we're looking at planning into the next municipal year. So if you're happy with that, I'll put in a separate Teams meeting to help with that planning. Is that okay?
That sounds great. And thank you all for today, and I will end this meeting here. Thank you.